the final episode of Seraph of the End, the battle in Nagoya, you and Mika finally decide to get married, move to San Francisco, and start a family and run a falafel cart. If only it were that simple. The final episode of Seraph of the End is ridiculous. It has got to be one of the craziest endings I've seen to an anime in quite some time, and that's just because what goes on in this episode is completely indescribable. Okay, so let me go ahead and just try my best here. Kureto shows up, and they start using this giant shipping container, which has all of these big metal spikes, which go and impale into people, and then suck out their essence and all this other shit, which suddenly explodes, and then you have Kimizuki's sister, who has these giant angel wings, who then unleashes this giant demonic creature from her back, which may or may not actually be an angel or some sort of demonic demon, which has the ability to spawn all of these other weird monster creatures, which are very similar to the Four Horsemen of John, which then forces everybody to sort of team up and fight against this thing, and then Yu transforms into his weird, crazy, weird angel form, which causes him to transform and become the King of Salt, fighting against this beast and destroying it in a giant action scene, which ends with an explosion of a pillar of salt of badassery. What the hell? Seriously, this episode just went nuts, and that's not even like the entire episode. There's still even more crazier things going on, but it all opened up with Kimizuki and Yu just getting completely stabbed by Gurren. What the hell, man? Gurren is possessed by his ex-girlfriend. It doesn't really seem to bother him, even when Shinya's beating the crap out of him. You have Cruel Tepes, who ends up getting betrayed by Crowley and Farid. Farid ends up sucking out her blood and presumably killing her, although let's face it, they're not gonna get rid of the Lolita vampire that quick. And then it all ends with Yu, Mika, and Shinoa's group going to this island in the middle of nowhere and being away for a couple of months before they decide that they're going to try and save Kimizuki's sister and Gurren. And then you have Kureto's group, who now has this brand new base of operations. They have all these brand new slick outfits. The vampires have this brand new leader come in. Just all this crazy shit is just being thrown at you in the final episode. And then they have the gall to say at the very end of the episode, "The end." They might as well put a little subtitle right underneath that says, "Read the manga, bitches!" I do not know how I really feel about the final episode of Seraph of the End, the Battle in Nagoya. What I will say is, it was visually stimulating. There was a lot of crazy imagery from this episode, from all of the angels and demons, in particular that moment where you became the King of Salt. You just sort of have to take that for what it is. Being the King of Salt gives him the ability to literally create weapons from them, and there's this great scene where he creates this big massive spear and decides to go all Ushio and Tora on this big demon by stabbing it, running up its side, jumping up in air, and throwing the spear down, which completely turns it into this giant pillar of salt which just shatters all over the place. Like I said, if anything, it looks pretty kick-ass. Aside from just all of the ridiculous action and the fact that Cruel Tepes was betrayed by Farid and Crowley, which was hinted at in some of the previous episodes, I think the most surprising thing and the thing that I really loved about this episode is that by the end of it, Mika has officially joined Yu's group, and they really do seem like they're forming their very own family, their very own faction, which is going to sort of be like another group that goes up against the humans who are experimenting on the Seraph of the End, which we really don't get to figure out what the hell that is, the Seraph of the End. I have no idea what it is. I really couldn't tell you. Maybe I missed something in the previous episodes, but that's just the way it is. But going back to the whole Mika element, just seeing him hang out with a group and being all normal, something about that is surprisingly heartwarming, and so glad that they didn't go into the yaoi territory with it this week. Not that I have a problem with that stuff, it just felt a little forced in some of the previous episodes, whereas this one had a much stronger family dynamic by the end of the episode. But there were so many different factions. Sometimes the humans were fighting against the vampires. Sometimes they were teaming up together to fight against the monsters. It was just a really crazy episode. That's all I gotta say. I don't know if they're going to continue it in anime form. If they're smart, they eventually will. From what I've learned from people, however, they are very close to the manga version, so if that does happen, it's going to be a good while from now, and if it does happen soon, it's going to be completely original, brand new material, which I'm not sure what I want to see, because I'm still not sure how I feel about the entire series in general. What I will say is, the second season of Seraph of the End kicked the shit out of the first season. The first season had some great moments and it had some imagery that I'll always remember, but the second season was just way more competent in terms of the storytelling, the action, the characterization, and just sort of making everything a lot crazier. Like this final episode, which was just completely freaking nuts! So what's the rundown on the final episode of Seraph of the End? Like I said, this was just an insane episode filled with so much crazy action, some really great fighting choreography, not just like the normal sword fights, but that scene where Yu takes out that big demon when he transforms is just so cool. And the visual look of that, like when he was transforming, was great with this giant tornado of fire suddenly appearing around him. Just a really nice looking episode that was just proving yet again that even though the series didn't have a lot of focus, it at least had some pretty cool imagery going for it. If you want, you could consider this the end of the series, but it's very clear from all of the different characters and factions and group that there's a lot more to tell from this story. We need to learn a lot more about Kureto's experiments. He's still around. Him fighting against Yu this week was really cool, even though it was very short-lived with his big electrical sword. As evil and messed up as he is, he's also pretty badass. And that really is the best way to describe the final episode of the Seraph of the End. Just badass with a lot of really crazy imagery, and it might get you to read the manga version, or it might make you really wish that the anime is going to return at some point. I still don't think the series is perfect. It still has some very stereotypical characters that I feel like I've seen and read in multiple other series, and really just nothing too unique going for it aside from like the imagery. But it was still pretty well produced, and it had some pretty great action scenes, and if you're even into action, or vampires, or monsters, it's an anime that I really do think that you should watch at least once. So, I'm gonna give the final episode a 4 out of 5. It was entertaining as hell, but it was also kind of confusing. I just really didn't know what was going on all that much, and I watched the couple scenes like a couple of times, and I still really had no idea what was going on. It was just completely insane. All I know is, if you watched the episode, please tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below, and make sure to tell me what you want to see from the future of Seraph of the End, if you're just going to read the manga, or if you're just going to hope for an anime version. But that's pretty much it. There it is, guys. If you want to see my previous reviews of Seraph of the End, there will be playlists on the channel. Who knows what's going to happen for the future? I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.